All right, so we'll study truth claims of these three different major religions. The first one is Christianity. What does Christianity believe to be truth, or does claim to be true? The first one is that all humans are sinners by birth due to the concept of original sin. I'm not gonna, we don't have time to go into the details of exactly what the original sin is, but just a high level idea there is that when God created Adam and Eve, he sent them to a place called uh, uh, a place like heaven, which is called the Garden of Eden. There, a lot of things were given to them, but there was one tree which was forbidden. They said, "Don't eat the fruit from this tree, or don't eat this fruit." And Adam and Eve did not listen, and they ate that forbidden fruit, and therefore sinned, and that's known as the original sin. And that sin, the nature of the sin is such that it gets transmitted by generation. So their children are also sinners because their parents had sinned, so on and so forth. So entire humanity is considered to be, sinner. They're all considered sinners. Original sin can be absolved by proclaiming or accepting Jesus as Savior. There are other kinds of sin which can be absolved by confession. So if you confess and say, okay, you go to a church and you accept that you've made a mistake, then that can be forgiven. Commandments. God has given commandments to all believers, which is a set of rules. So there are 10 commandments. I'm not going to go into details of each one of them. Life is temporary. As we said on the time scale, time is linear and life is really temporary. And the main goal is to get to a place called heaven, which happens after life. Judgment Day will decide who goes to hell versus heaven. Primary requirement for entry into heaven is belief in Christianity, specifically in the Nicene Creed, which a Christian would recite every time you go to the church. Karma, or your deeds, are secondary. So even before you can be considered for heaven versus hell, you have to be a Christian. If you're non-Christian, you're automatically going to hell. Animals and plants are created for human consumption and enjoyment. This is from Genesis 1:26. So again, the status of humans is higher than other life forms. And then the last point about treatment of females. So the status of male versus female is also different. I've got two examples for you for that. The first one is that when God created Adam, he created Eve from Adam's rib. So Adam was created first, male. Eve, female, was created from one of his body parts, namely the rib. Second example I have is up until recently in history, in Christianity, women were believed to not have a soul. Now, this is being contested by the church, and you would, if you try to Google for it, you would find references, but they would say this is wrong, and we don't accept that, etc. But at one point, that was also the case. Here is a Nicene Creed. We're not going to read this entire thing, but basically, it says you believe in God, the Father, and the Son, who is Jesus. He was born to the Virgin Mary, so there's references to the virgin birth and to the original sin, etc., etc. So that's the Nicene Creed, which is non-negotiable. And if you are a Christian of any denomination, you must accept Nicene Creed. Let's move on to Islam. So again, commandments are given to all believers. They're called Sunnat and Shariat. So Shariat is Islamic law. Sunnat is the way that the Prophet lived his life. So all his actions, the way he walked and talked, etc., is called Sunnat, and all people who follow Islam are required to sort of emulate him. Life is temporary, and the main goal is to get to Jannat. So similar concept as we saw in Christianity. So Judgment Day, called Roze Qayamat in Islam, decides who goes to hell versus heaven. Entire humanity must accept Islam before Judgment Day can arrive. So that's the requirement. Primary requirement for entry in heaven is, again, belief in Islam, which is called Shahada, or you might have heard another term called Kalma. Karma, or your deeds, are secondary. So you're encouraged to do good karma, but again, that's secondary. The primary requirement being you must accept Islam. Animals and plants are created for human consumption and enjoyment, same concept as in Christianity. And then the treatment of females is captured in this surah called An-Nisa. From the entire Surah 4 is dedicated to the treatment of females. So you can read about that. So again, there's a lower status of females as compared to males in Islam, and that's pretty clear from this surah. Here's here's verse number 34 from Surah 4. We're not going to read this entire thing, but you can see at the bottom, it says men are in charge of women, and what happens if the woman is not obedient, etc. What can the male do, so on and so forth. Here's the Shahada, which is the non-negotiable equivalent of the Nicene Creed in Islam. So essentially, it says there's no God but Allah. So this is the, in Arabic, typically people would say is La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. So there's one God, there's no other God but Allah, and there is Muhammad is his messenger. So move on to Hinduism. So the truth claims are life and death are both temporary, and time has no beginning or end. So that's the meaning of Sanatan. Karma is primary, and it determines the next birth and destiny. Goal of life is to escape the cycle of life and death, called moksha, or also called Jivan Mukti. In some systems like Buddhism, it's called Nirvana. All life forms have the same essence. Vedas are accepted as Shruti, it's known as Shabda Praman. Smriti is created according to contemporary needs. Female and male are not just equal, but they're complementary. So Ardhanareshwar model